first for breaking news and the best live sport.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
It's your call. It's 9 o'clock. Is it right to name people accused of sex crimes? Yesterday, the Coronation Street actor Michael le Vell was cleared of attacking a young girl over a number of years. His co-stars say it's been trialled by media. Stephen Cooper was wrongly accused of sexual offences 25 years ago.
He has lived 2 years of absolute hell, as he says. He's never going to get over this, and the minute someone switches on the television and sees him, they're going to make comments. Comments have been made on Twitter and Facebook.
Well, is it fair to name people before they're convicted, or is it essential for open justice? John Cooper is a criminal barrister.
By naming a person who the police feel they have evidence against, other people, cogent witnesses, often come forward and say they too have been damaged, they too have been harmed.
Well, is it right to name people accused of sex crimes? 0500 909 693. The lines are open now. You're with 5 Live from the BBC.
5 Live.
Good morning. It's 9:05. So it's an interesting one, this, and it's a really raging debate this morning. As ever, I almost said. This one in particular after the le Vell case. Is it right to name people accused of sex crimes? All this much in the news recently, post-Savile. Nick Freeman joins us, solicitor who has represented somebody high profile who was cleared of rape. Nick, good morning to you.
Good morning, Nicky.
Hi there. And Lisa Longstaff as well, spokesperson for Women Against Rape. Lisa, let's listen to John in London. Hello, Lisa. Are you there?
Hi.
Good. Excellent. Good morning. Let's listen to John in London, who has called us. Hello, John. What's your story?
Hi, yes. My story, 20 years ago, I was accused of 7 charges against children. One of them was rape of a child under 5 years old. I was named in the newspapers. I was taken to court. The evidence was laughable. The evidence didn't back up the evidence. The physical evidence didn't back up the stories of the kids at all. I was found not guilty in less than 2 hours, unanimously on all charges. But even now, 20 years later, I do a job where I come into contact with special needs children now and again, and the hoops I had to go through and investigations I had to go through because of what I was charged with 20 years ago and found not guilty. I've had to move house. Originally, in the first 8 years, I had to move house about 9 times in 8 years. Windows smashed, people who recognised me because my name had been put in the newspaper, my family getting attacked on the way to school, all because I was named and found not guilty.
Do people still remember?
Oh, in certain parts of the country, people still remember. I don't live anywhere near where it happened now.
And they remember the accusation and the charge rather than the acquittal?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely they do. Even people in authority, in instances where, for example, where I come into contact with a friend's little girl, and before, unknown to me, behind my back, because the authorities have got where that I've been in contact with this little girl has been questioned about what I might or might not have been up to with her. And that was 18 years after the event. That was only a couple of years ago. Now, obviously I'm still on some list somewhere for my name to have been highlighted, for them to then go and investigate without any allegations or anything, just because my name was brought up.
Were these charges malicious?
I believe so. I mean, I don't know. I believe they were. I believe it started off with one allegation. I was arrested on one allegation. I was then named in the newspaper, and then suddenly more allegations came out. Children who were accusing me of holding them prisoner inside my house. And when they were asked to describe my house, they were miles out. They couldn't get anything right. And yet, the police sent a photographer around to try and back up with the child description, and the photographs showed that the descriptions were wrong. Those photographs didn't turn up in court.
Lisa Longstaff, why should a man in John's position be named?
Well, why make rape a totally different case in law than any other crime that you could be accused of? That's my question. Obviously, if somebody's falsely accused of any crime, that can ruin people's lives. Often we hear that rape is uniquely stigmatising, and we don't agree that that's true. we know people who've been accused of terrorism wrongly, or killing a police officer, or, any number of other crimes which hold equal, if not more, social stigma. And yet it's only rape that some people are saying defendants should be, remain anonymous, and we just don't agree. And we think that behind this, actually, there's a myth that loads of people make up false allegations of rape, and that has just been proved not to be true.
Nick Freeman.
Yes, Nicky. Well, St John's a very sad story, and it illustrates perfectly the fallout position of false accusations. To answer Lisa's point, and turn it round on its head, I cannot see how it serves the course of justice by naming people unless the prosecution believe they're dealing with a serial offender. And Lisa says, well, why she's selecting rape or other sexual offences as being the same, and she's saying that they're in fact no way different to somebody who's acquitted of murder or a terrorist offence. Well, there is a difference, because in a case involving a sexual allegation, the complainant is granted anonymity. In other words, they are afforded complete protection throughout the entire process, right to the end of the trial, even if the defendant is acquitted. And that's not a level playing field, so they can come forward with an impunity. They can say exactly what they want, whether it be untrue, malicious, falsehood, and they have complete protection. And it's only on extremely rare occasions that a judge will say that this particular person should be investigated, or a judge, in fact, does have to lift that anonymity for the complainant. But,
can I come back?
It isn't a level playing field from the start with.
Can I come back on that?
The other point, just let me finish one moment, Lisa. The second point is, we talk about this social stigma. There is a revulsion involving sexual allegations that transcends any degree of revulsion relating to murder, relating to terrorist offences. It's something that is uniquely stigmatised because it's almost beyond comprehension. For example, as in the Michael le Vell case, how any grown man could commit those sort of offences against a 6-year-old child. People just cannot understand it, and there is this unique revulsion that doesn't unfortunately die with the acquittal. As John has illustrated, it remains with that particular person for the rest of his days.
Okay, Lisa.
However innocent he is.
All right, Lisa, come back as you want.
Just let me come back on 2 points. One is Nick really should know better as a lawyer that the level playing field argument really doesn't hold up, because you cannot compare a defendant with a victim in a case. You need to be comparing a defendant with other defendants and the right, therein. The reason that women who report rape and children were given anonymity was that decades ago it was quite clear that hardly any rapes that occur are reported. A huge proportion, I think the British Crime Survey at the moment says 85% of women raped don't report it at all, ever. And anonymity was the only way that the authorities could find to encourage women to come forward and report without having their address, name, photographs, entire sexual history blazoned all over the media. That doesn't happen with men accused of rape. I'm sorry. Yes, the media go in a salacious way, and that's bad. But without...
What do you mean by a salacious way, if I may stop you? I mean, Nick made the point about the revulsion of...
Without the fact of what happened with Jimmy Savile, this whole debate wouldn't have reared its ugly head. But without the ability for the police to name the defendants or men accused of rape...
He was dead.
The whole hundreds of people who accused Jimmy Savile wouldn't have come forward.
But he was dead.
Well,
so there's no reputation... Yeah, go on, Nick.
Yes, he was dead, but there's been a whole set of other celebrities who've been prosecuted since then, all of whom have denied it vigorously, and some of whom have actually been convicted. So your arguments don't hold up.
What I'm saying is, in the Jimmy Savile case, he shouldn't have been granted anonymity. That veil would have undoubtedly been lifted, because, of course, there were
Nick,
many other...
Lisa,
can I finish?
You argued
please?
that the authorities should be able to name people where they know that there's a serial attacker, but they don't know. That's the problem. And the police, the law was overturned in 1988.
Okay, hang on. What, they don't know. That's a very good point. As in the taxi driver, the War Boys case, they don't know unless he's named Nick Freeman.
This used to be law in 1976.
All right, okay. Let's get Nick Freeman's response to that. Then we'll come to Adam in Kettering and John still with us. Nick Freeman.
Yes, the police do have intelligence, and they have a very shrewd idea when they're dealing with a particular suspect, whether they suspect that particular defendant of having committed other offences. And if they do, it's quite right that they should go to a judge who would undoubtedly look upon an application favourably and say, yes, we believe there are other people out there, and we are going to lift that anonymity to encourage other people to come forward. I'm completely in agreement with Lisa in the sense that people who are the complainant should, of course, be protected, but in the same way, so should a defendant until such time as he is convicted, unless they believe they're dealing with somebody who is a serial offender. The police do know, they have intelligence, and I'm saying there is a gateway, they come before a judge, and a judge inevitably will say, yes, in this particular case, it's in the interest of justice to identify this particular person. But in the case of Michael le Vell, he's been acquitted. The public know all about his personal life, his drink problem, the fact that he's a serial adulterer. These aren't criminal matters. These are private matters between him and his family. And yet, we now know all about his life. And undoubtedly, that aside, there will be many people who still think, even though he's been acquitted, that in fact there is no smoke without fire and there's something in this. And this will remain...
Allow me, Lisa. Allow me, Lisa, if I may. Now, can I stop both of you just for a second? Because I want to hear a couple of calls to get a measure of what people are saying. But I'll come back to both of you if you'll forgive me just now. Now, my apologies for interrupting, but it's your call. And Adam, you're on. Adam in Kettering, what would you like to say? Hello, Adam, are you there? Let's go to Peter in Durham. Hello, Peter. Good morning to you. What's your point?
Good morning. Well, a couple of points, really. But when the police and CPS have decided that they're going to try to beat anonymity and appeal for people, it is because fundamentally they do not have evidence or sufficient evidence already. And that actually contravenes Article 8 of our human rights, which says that everybody is entitled to a private and family life.
John in London, do you want to come back, John?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just listening to the conversation. I just think that the anonymity PowerPoint, I'm not advocating just for sex crimes. I think it should be right across the board for all crimes.
For all crimes. Adam in Kettering is now there, and I think we can now speak to him. Are you there, Adam?
Yes, I am, Nicky. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Go on.
I totally 100. I can't believe I actually agree with a lawyer, but I totally 100% agree with. Was it Nick who was the
Nick Freeman?
Yeah, absolutely. If Michael le Vell had been guilty, lock him up, throw away the key, chop everything off, do it. Absolutely. But he wasn't. He should never have been named until proven guilty. His life is in ruins now. I don't want to know that he has a drink problem or that he cheats on his wife. That's of no interest to us. But it's all in the papers. Somebody, Nicky, could ring up the police tomorrow and say, oh, that Nicky Campbell, he did something to me 10 years ago. You would be arrested. Your name would be all over the paper. How would you feel about that? It's wrong, isn't it?
Lisa?
It would be wrong.
You could say the same thing about any other crime, though. I agree with...
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with you, Lisa. Don't name anybody until they're guilty. You're proven innocent until guilty in this country.
Yeah, but none of the people who are calling for this are saying that. None of them. Everybody who's pressing for this in a vigorous way are making rape a totally different
I agree with you there,
and
Lisa.
it should not be. You can't make exceptions like that in law. It's just not right.
I totally agree. I agree with you there, Lisa. You should be innocent until proven guilty. So your name should not be mentioned until you're proven guilty. Then yes, go to town.
Nick Freeman should somebody who's accused of blowing up a lot of people in a terrorist atrocity, should their name be withheld?
I would never resist that argument. I can see the sense in that argument right across the criminal calendar, subject to the caveat that I've stated that, if it's in the public interest, the person should be named. There is a presumption in this country that you're innocent until proven guilty. And we have to follow what the rule of law says, which is to follow that presumption. We assume we're innocent until the Crown show so that we're sure we're guilty. And there's no in-between. We're not in Scotland where it's guilty or innocent or not proven. In this country, you're either guilty
we are,
or
actually. We're all over the place on Five Live.
You know what, in my eyes, Michael le Vell was guilty until he was proven innocent, and that was completely the wrong way round.
That's because he was named, and because we learned all these salacious details about him, which we had the right.
Nick Freeman, just before we lose you, and Lisa, hopefully you can stay, give us an idea from your experience of dealing with particular cases where people for particularly heinous crimes have been acquitted. Give us an idea of the after effects and why there are those after effects, why people don't take it as read that they are not guilty and move on.
They're life-wrecking. I assume the question is directed to a sexual allegation, so I'll deal with it in that way. They are life-wrecking because the public and employers assume there's no smoke without fire, and that one tends to lose one's job, one tends to be ostracised by one's friends, by one's neighbours, and by the public generally, who will post things on social network sites. And as I say, the allegation does not die with the acquittal. It's there for the rest of your life. And in particular cases that I've had, that has been my experience. And however nice and however innocent you are, it never leaves you.
Thank you.
You're extremely vulnerable,
Thank you very much. It's 9:21. More to come. Your thoughts, please, on the whole issue of anonymity, pre-charging, post-charging, and for what particular crimes should it be applicable? Here's Michelle.
Well, let's start with the motorways and the...
This is 5 Live Breakfast. Your call.
And Pete in Leeds is going to tell us his personal experience of this. Thank you for calling us, Pete. It's appreciated. What happened to you?
Good morning, Nicky. It's a situation with the news that's affected me because I can look at it from both sides, really. 3 years ago, I had my drink spiked in a pub. While I was working away, I was followed back to my lorry, assaulted in a sexual way to an extent, but I got the person out of my truck, and the next thing I know, 15 minutes later, my truck's surrounded by police, and funnily enough, it was Preston Police, it was Lancashire Police again, who seem to do these things.
Well, let's not make any accusations along those lines. Otherwise, we get into a whole lot of legal hot water. I have to say this. It's a pro forma. They're not here to defend themselves. So carry on with your story.
So basically, I'm a 46-year-old man. I was accused by a 23-year-old man who was about 3 inches, 4 inches taller than me and a good 2.5 stone heavier, that I'd raped him. And I was on bail for 6 months, and it was an absolute nightmare. Very suicidal thoughts, depression. I ended up having counselling last year, which is sort of 2.5, 3 years after the event. And stuff like this, it brings it up. With listening to the Michael le Vell, it's like it was yesterday. It just brings it all back to your mind. And looking at it from the other aspect, the girl saying she was raped as a child. My sister killed herself last year. She'd been trying to kill herself for a long time because I didn't know till I was 25 that when I was 9 and she was 6 and 7, that she had been raped, and she was raped over a number of years. And so I can see the damage that comes from that side of it, and it's difficult to look at whether it's
raped over a number of years.
Malicious. It was my father died when I was very young, and it was somebody that my mother met and moved in with, and he was raping my little sister from the age of 6 or 7, and the sister next up from me would have been 9 or 10, and I was somewhere in the middle. And I was 13 when myself and my 17-year-old newly in the army brother threw him out. But I didn't know till I was 25 that she'd been raped.
Oh, awful. Listen, when Michael le Vell said that he'd been through a hell over the last 2 years, you understand what he means, yeah?
Oh, God, yeah. Seriously. And I hope he either takes out a civil case against the girl, or the police look at pressing charges for malicious rape allegation, wasting police time, however you want to look at it. But I suspect a lot of these cases that have been coming up and up since Jimmy Savile there are some malicious claims, and the police need to be really carefully looking at these to stop them basically destroying people's lives.
Destroying people's lives. Francine, allow me, please, to Pete. But sorry, Nick. No, Pete. Sorry. Stay there, Pete. And listen to Francine. I think she kind of agrees with you. Francine's in Tyne and Weir. Good morning, Francine.
Oh, good morning. Yes, I entirely agree with the points the gentleman said about that this gentleman who's just been not charged with rape should take civil action, and also a waste of police time. I would suggest, I think it's outrageous that when a male defendant is found not guilty of rape, the female plaintiff, who's obviously lied, remains incognito. She should be named and shamed and charged with the willful crime of trying to destroy a man's life.
In some circumstances, it's a very difficult crime to prove. It may possibly have happened, but we get to evidence. We have the Scottish situation where we have the verdict of not proven, which is a kind of, legal no man's land. Yeah. And it is a difficult, there are only two people there very often, and so, maybe we should just all move on after a case.
No woman should not be remain incognito. And I also find it outrageous hunting down these men of assaults and rape that they're supposed to have committed 40 years ago, when we've got 13 and 14-year-old girls giving birth all the time, and I don't hear the father of these kids being charged or the mother being charged with child abuse for allowing their girls to roam the streets at that age.
Here's Nick in Yorkshire.
Hello?
Hello, Nick.
Hello there.
Hello there.
Hi. How are things, all right?
Yeah, you're on the radio, and there seem to be a lot of people on one side of this argument. We had Pete's experience there, which sounds awful. What would you like to say?
Well, I've got a friend who was arrested over a year ago, and blue lights and flashing lights in the middle of the night, and arrested, taken to the police station and arrested on a rape charge from the late 70s. And I find it unthinkable that he could have done this, because he's a dignified guy in his 50s, and and it's destroyed his life. And he's going to have to move house, he thinks, and had kind of sleeping problems and stuff like that, and it just seems so unfair, I think.
Well, we'll put those points to Lisa when we speak to her again. Thank you very much. And Pete, I said I'd come back to you, so a quick final comment. We've got unemployment figures imminent, but Pete,
yes.
A final thought?
The police need to be more even-handed looking at it. I would love to name the guy, not obviously that killed my sister. I look at him 30, 40 years after the event, he murdered my sister. And he went on from family to family to family, which is what I found out afterwards when I was sort of still in my teens. He was moving from single mother to single mother to single mother. The guy's a serial rapist, he's a serial paedophile. And I'd love to name him, but I can't.
OK, thank you very much indeed. As I say, we have those unemployment figures. It is, and it's your call, and we're talking about anonymity. And some interesting points being made. Some people have been through horrendous experiences. Is it right to name people accused of sex crimes? We're going to speak to Lisa Longstaff is back, Women Against Rape. Hello, Lisa.
Hi there.
Good to hear you again. Christine Hamilton, wrongly accused of rape alongside her husband, Neil. Hello, Christine.
Hello, Nicky.
Yeah, I know you went through a terrible experience. Lisa Longstaff, explain to Christine Hamilton why you think she and Neil should have been named, as indeed they were. Lisa.
Well, we don't think that the law should be changed on the basis of a handful of celebrities who claim to have been falsely accused. That's the first thing. And that is the argument that Nick Freeman always puts forward, is that this is terrible for everyone. But actually, he's made his career. He's named Mr. Loophole, defending celebrities who get accused of all kinds of crimes. But he always goes and speaks publicly about people accused of sex crimes. But the reason that we're against it mainly is that we don't think that the law should be different for, a unique special case should be made for rape, when every other person accused of any other crime can be named publicly. That's the principled position.
Do you have sympathy for the stigma people have, are labelled with, and the insinuations people continue to make? Christine, tell Lisa what it's been like.
Well, I mean, the first thing which I really do want, and I slightly bristled when she said that we are not talking about a handful of celebrities. The celebrities are the people who hit the headlines in a major way, as Michael le Vell has done, and as we did. They are the people who the whole country knows about, indeed, probably most of the world in Michael le Vell's case. But this happens. These false allegations are made to normal, ordinary people in their daily lives. They hit their own headlines. They hit their local newspapers. They don't necessarily hit the national papers. And the idea that this is just a celebrity-driven thing is so totally wrong.
Well, can I come back on that, please?
Well, all right.
I completely refute that false allegations are rife in everyday life. What I see in my work is that hundreds of men are being acquitted of rape on the basis of what I would say there's been a bungled investigation and prosecution, and the restrictive ways that the prosecution is able to put the evidence forward. There's a big difference between an acquittal, because there wasn't sufficient evidence to convince the jury to acquit the person, and a false allegation, which is a totally different matter.
Of course there is.
A big difference. And let's not inflate the two.
Rape is a uniquely horrible crime. Nobody is suggesting that it isn't. I mean, it's second only to murder, and it's feared by every woman, and it nearly always depends, excuse me, on the majority of cases, on one person's word against another. So it is by its very nature, and there are no witnesses.
That's not true. There are many cases which depend on that.
Look, I think you've had your say for a moment.
Excuse me, I've been invited to speak on this programme.
So have I, but every time I start to speak, you've interrupted me.
Well, carry on. Be my guest.
My view is that both parties deserve anonymity, which is what the law demanded in 1976. And by abolishing it for the accused, we've caused the pendulum to swing too far. There isn't a person in this world, apart from a rapist, who wants anybody to get away with it. Of course they don't. We all want the same end. We want the accused people to be convicted, but we don't want those who are totally innocent to have their lives completely and utterly wrecked. There's a halfway house, which means that people would not be, their names would not be revealed until they had at least been charged. Now, that would not have...
So what do you think about that halfway house, Lisa? We've got Terry in Essex, James in Essex, a bit of Essex action in a second. Lisa, what do you think about that halfway house scenario?
That's a false representation of the principle of the law. Why would you make a separate law for people accused of rape when anyone accused of any other crime can have their name?
Well, hang on, let her finish, Christine. Yeah. So
rape has already been singled out because it's the only crime where the accuser gets anonymity. It has already been identified as a unique crime.
But you can't compare the two. The victim and the defendant are not the same legally. They have different rights.
The alleged victim.
Yes,
they have different rights in the legal system.
The alleged victim, as Nicky so rightly points out, the alleged victim and the alleged rapist. And this is what you have to... The idea that you have to name people, and I know the argument, everybody does, that you have to name people so that other women will come forward. That is the argument, and I'm well aware, for example, of the case of Stuart Hall, where naming him, and there are others, other people have come forward, and there are other people in what you might call the pipeline, waiting to have their cases heard. First of all, that assumes not only that the man in question is guilty, but also that he's likely to be a serial rapist. Now, Michael le Vell is a totally innocent man. Not a single other person came forward. This was one person's word, backed up by her mother. In most cases, the parties do know each other.
Let's have Terry in Essex, James in Essex. Terry, good morning.
Good morning. Morning, Nicky.
Good. You're on your call.
Yeah, thank you. My point is I just get very frustrated when I hear the terms about people saying that false allegations have been made. And I think for me, the fact that CPS go to court suggests that they believe there's enough evidence for a conviction. And then the fact is that someone's found not guilty, it's because there's not enough evidence, and therefore, it doesn't necessarily mean to say that.
Yes, but we go through various, moral climates in this country, don't we? Do you remember back the moral climate in the 70s with the Birmingham Six, it was the 70s, the Birmingham Six and the Guildford Four. There was a moral climate that, they must be guilty, and innocent men were put in prison for a long, long time. Perhaps, arguably, we have a certain moral climate at the moment, Terry, as well.
Yes, there is. I agree, and I think as a reasoned society, we evolve with that, and we review and we adjust accordingly. But I think certainly for me at present, there needed to be a shift towards encouraging people to have the confidence to come forward with their allegations of sexual assault or rape, etc. Because there was facts proved that showed that women particularly were reluctant to come forward, and I think we just have to be careful about how we then label that later on as time moves on, and we start using terms like false allegations, when reality is, for me, is that CPS would never go to court if they thought it was a false allegation. They believe there's evidence there that suggests there's a chance of conviction, and it's just about the way, I guess, it's reported and referred to. I think that can then turn people away from coming forward.
You are perhaps,
Can I come in on that?
Christine, I think he makes a very good point. Maybe the media should just, like in the old days, report the facts of the case without the banner pictures, and I don't know. What do you think?
Well, let's get me going on the media. Terry's absolutely right that people should be encouraged to come forward. Of course they should. That is absolutely fundamental. Nobody is disputing that. Everybody should be encouraged to come forward. But just because the CPS bring a case, it doesn't mean that they believe the person is guilty. What they believe is that there is a case to answer, and that's fundamentally different. What the CPS is saying is that, yes, we think these facts are sufficiently strong. They should be heard in a court of law by a jury. They are not saying that that person is guilty. That's absolutely not what they're saying.
OK, and James in Essex, we'll have more calls after we've heard from Michelle. James, your quick point, please.
Yeah, it was about the point of there was a murder in Bristol a couple of Christmases ago where the landlord, I don't know whether I can say his name on air or not.
Don't, just in case.
He was basically arrested for that murder, and the next day, before he'd even, I would think, been interviewed.
We can mention him. Yes, of course we can.
It was Christopher Jeffries.
You can mention that, yes.
He was arrested, and before, he hadn't even been released from prison. He hadn't even been released from police custody. A decision hadn't even been made.
Yeah, outrageous.
And basically, you've got newspaper reporters knocking on neighbours' doors, asking what people are like.
And all that malicious stuff like, he looks a bit weird, he must have done it, all that stuff. Terrible stuff.
Exactly, and you have a look at some of these celebrities who've been arrested, they are actually on police bail. They haven't even been charged, yet we all seem to know who they are. Jim Davidson, he wasn't even charged.
You make a very good point about Chris Jeffries. Once I clicked what the case you were talking about, I was in obvious legal panic mode for a minute, but it's a very good case to mention.
Yes.
And sorry, who is that?
It's Lisa. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
This has happened to quite a few people, and with a big variety of crimes. And it's only because somebody was then convicted of that crime that person, was able to recoup their reputation.
Yeah, but Nicky, I think what needs to be done is guidelines, not just on sexual offences, but where there is no reporting pre-charge and post-charge. I think it should go to a judge when they go to their first hearing of whether there should be reporting restrictions.
That's a very good point. Let the judge decide.
It's 9:49. Here's Michelle with the travel news.
Well, starting with the motorways and the M4.
This is 5 Live Breakfast. Your call.
I want to get the views of Mark Williams-Thomas on this criminologist, child protection expert, instrumental in the exposure of the crimes of Jimmy Savile. Hello, Mark.
Good morning, Nicky.
Your views on anonymity?
Well, I think we have to be very careful here. First of all, there's an awful lot of comments, of course, being made by people, very subjective. None of them have sat through the evidence that came out through court, and so most of them are providing ill-informed views. I think we need to step back from that. Child abuse is an incredibly emotive situation, and I understand that. And of course, following Savile, we've created a new climate, a climate where victims feel far more empowered to come forward and report their abuse. Indeed, 82% of victims of both adult and child sexual offences never report their offences. So that just gives you a flavour of the scale of it. But let's be clear, there are two issues here. The first issue is anonymity of the accused after charge. Now, what we need to do is look at the issue of what that affects. If we are saying that we provide anonymity for those who have been charged going to court, we are effectively saying we're entering a private, secret court scenario, and that can be one we can never, ever enter into. We have to see the justice system, and we have to see the justice system openly there. And Stuart Hall, of course, the high-profile celebrity that was prosecuted, who vehemently denied ever having done anything wrong, and as a result of Savile, people came forward because his name was in the public domain. That's the first issue. The second issue with regards to naming of individuals after arrest, again, something that's raised itself significantly following Operation Yewtree, the Metropolitan Police inquiry following Savile. And I can tell you, certainly in relation to one of those individuals, is as a direct result of his name going into the public domain, 50 people came forward, both witnesses and victims, with separate information. So there's a real validity to it.
Do you think we've had the last of the high-profile arrests?
Well, we've certainly, Operation Yewtree has moved to a point now where, of course, the focus quite rightly needs to be building the evidence around, or looking to see whether there is evidence to support the potential charges. And we've seen some charges, and there will be some trials coming up in March. There are a number of other high-profile individuals that I know about, that I've passed to the Metropolitan Police and to other police forces, who are subject to current criminal investigations and will be looked at. But there is a focus...
Who have not yet been named?
Who have not yet been named or arrested.
I see. But of course we have the case of, for example, Jim Davidson. Waste of time.
Well, not a waste of time, because, of course, if those allegations are made, it's really important the police investigate. And this is what's the crux of this, is that what we need to do, and as a result of Savile, I have seen some of that change, but there's still a long way to go, is we need to start at the point where the initial allegation is made. What we need to do is improve the quality of the police investigations. What we shouldn't be doing is putting single victims to court, because by and large, certainly if they're historic cases, there will be no forensic evidence. We know that sexual offences tend to occur one-on-one, so there's no independent witnesses. And what you are doing effectively putting is one person up against another, and that's a terribly traumatic scenario for both parties to be involved in. What we need to do is to say to the police, let's start investigating these crimes better. Let's look to see if there's other supporting evidence. There are other potential witnesses, and by and large, the large majority of those people who commit sexual offences do not commit sexual offences in isolation. They have multiple victims.
Thank you, Mark. Mark Williams-Thomas. John in Glasgow. What's your story, John?
Oh, hi, Nicky. Mark just talked a lot of sense there, actually, for me, but it's something that I've been through myself fairly recently, within the last couple of years. And I totally understand the need for the defendant's name to be out there if it is in the public interest, but at the moment, their name can be out there as soon as they're arrested. I think it's something that should maybe be discussed at the first hearing in court, where a judge can make that decision whether it's in the public interest. The problem is, though, that my particular problem was that the accuser, who obviously has complete anonymity for the rest of their life, was able to request some compensation immediately. It didn't make any difference whether I was going to be found guilty or not. At the end, I was charged, and it got dropped before it went to court. And what came out was this was the third time that the accuser had actually made similar allegations. Now, I feel that if the defendant's going to be named for these reasons, then so should the accuser. It may well be that there's other people out there that have had the finger pointed at them by this particular person.
Let's put that to Jill Sayward. I want to put that it's a very, very important point. Jill, victim of rape, now a campaigner for victims' rights. What do you say to John?
I say that in those instances she should be prosecuted if it's a malicious if it's a malicious allegation, and the police should do that more often, where they can prove that these things are happening maliciously, and it would sound like that is a malicious thing to do.
Can I come in?
Yes, you can. Is that Lisa?
No, it's Christy. sorry,
Christine.
No, it's Jill.
Far from Lisa.
I've spoken with Jill before. I think she's absolutely right. I mean, in my view, is we all want the same outcome, all of us, whatever side, but we all want the same outcome. It's a question of how you go about it, and I think Jill has mentioned this charge of malicious prosecution, and I think she is absolutely right. The girl in our case, who I can name because she sold her anonymity to the News of the World for £50,000, Nadine Milroy Sloan, her allegations against us were totally malicious, and she did go to jail for 3 years for she didn't serve the 3, but her sentence was 3, for seeking to pervert the course of justice. And I think there has got to be some sort of comeback on these women who deliberately go out and invent falsehoods. Now, every time they do that, this is the other thing which I feel so strongly about on this issue, every time a woman cries rape falsely, and they do, she did in our case, it makes it that much more difficult for a genuine victim to be heard. So the more we can stop false allegations, the better, because that means that the genuine victims are going to be much more likely to be heard, because people will say, this is correct.
Jill, what do you think about that?
But I agree with Christine, but what I must say is that there is no evidence whatsoever to suggest that there are any more false allegations in crimes of sexual violence than in any other case. And so what I think that we have to make clear, and as Mark made clear, was the fact that many people, where there is a not guilty verdict, doesn't mean to say that a crime hasn't taken place. There are millions of reasons why a case may fail, and a verdict may come back as not guilty.
But we have to accept that verdict.
We have to accept. Yes, we have to accept the verdict.
There's no smoke without fire.
But we also have to accept that there are a lot of victims out there who are told that they haven't been raped. Now, in no other crime would we say to somebody, "You have not been a victim of this." We do in rape, and it's very, very, very damaging to girls and men to whom this has happened.
Well, listen, thank you all very much for your contributions. Jill, you got into a studio for us, and I appreciate that. Thank you to John in Glasgow and all our other callers. And Christine Hamilton, once more, for coming on and going through your horrendous experience when you were wrongly accused of rape. Thanks to Lisa Longstaff, who was on earlier as well. Thank you so much for listening. Rachel will return tomorrow. She'll be here at 6 o'clock. With George. I'll pitch in at 7 or just before, and there'll be another Your Call for you at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Have a really good Wednesday.